Hello guys, my name is HASEEB and I worked on this group project with my group members Isabella Lee, Brian Yelbanovsky, Bulat Karasov, and Shane Bridgepal, and we combined the first letters of our names to form our group name, which is HIBS. Today we will be talking about the forced sterilization of women in Puerto Rico. Now, to begin discussing this topic, let's define some important terms that we will be discussing in this video so that we're all on the same page. All of these definitions are paraphrased from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. So to begin, sterilization, which is the star of the show, is a procedure that makes living organisms incapable of reproduction. Additionally, eugenics is a practice of breeding the human population in a way that improves the population's genetic composition. However, this practice is very immoral since people with undesirable traits are prevented from reproducing. It can be taken away that a big chunk of eugenics is done by forced sterilization, making these two terms go hand in hand with each other. We will also discuss colonialism, which is a nation exerting control over another nation. This can be done both economically and even politically. Alright, now it's time to go back in time to the creation of the world's first birth control pill, which is called Enovid. According to Aaron Blakemore, this pill was tested in secret clinical trials in Puerto Rico. In other words, researchers gave poor Puerto Rican women strong pills that affected their hormones without even telling them that they were part of this experiment. These women didn't know that the pill was experimental and the risks that were involved in this. The symptoms of this pill were nausea, blood clots, and even depression. And when the women reported these symptoms, they were all ignored. More specifically, they were attributed as unreliable, in quotes. Unfortunately, 3 women did pass away during this experiment, and on top of that, their deaths were never investigated. It's as if these deaths just didn't matter to the researchers. And to top it all off, Enovid was later tested on both men and women in mental asylums without their consent. And that just emphasizes how unethical this experimentation really was. To add on, Anique Jones stated that by the 1960s, a third of Puerto Rican women ages 20 to 49 were sterilized. This is 67%, which makes this the highest rate in the world. The reason that the ages were 20 to 49 is because these are considered the ages that women can reproduce. U.S. officials portrayed Puerto Rican women as reproducing way too fast, so consequently, fertility was turned into something that had to be controlled. For example, Law 116 in 1937 allowed sterilizations based on people who were seen as unfit. Specifically, it was based on poverty. In addition, Operation Bootstrap, which focused on the economy and its development, framed sterilization as something modern. This conveys how sterilization was seen as for the good of women. However, its roots were political and colonial. It is also important to note that many women thought that the procedure was reversible rather than permanent. The lack of knowledge women had about sterilization displays how it wasn't just a choice, but these women were manipulated into getting the procedure done. Meanwhile, let's define another term. Lisa Coe said that reproductive justice means the right to have children, not have children, and parent those children safely. Now, this means that these children grew up in safe environments where they had all their necessities such as food, water, and shelter. Now, forced sterilization went against this. It made evident that women of color, criminals, immigrants, and poor women were left out of having total control of their reproductive rights. I'm going to pass you guys off.
In a study done about sterilization of regret among Puerto Rican women with contraceptive tubal sterilizations, TS, about 21% of the 846 respondents expressed some regret, with 11% admitting dissatisfaction. Some factors that caused these feelings were young age, absence of daughters, being unable to make their own choice, sterilization failure, and living with a new spouse. Other factors not independently associated with regret included years since TS, education, and age at follow-up. The sterilization surgery was referred to as La Operación, which was built on the discussion of solving overpopulation through birth control and sterilization. This concept of overpopulation stems directly from North American nationalism. This ultimately derived from hard eugenics and the suggestion of sterilization of what was thought as inferior people. This racist nationalism combined with modern nationalism was promoted to small families and deceived them into believing that this would benefit the well-being of their island. Going back to Operation Bootstrap, the United States' attempt on bringing industrialization and manufacturing to Puerto Rico only resulted in a displaced population trapped in poverty and reliant on big corporations. The eugenics movement created arguments against the dark-skinned Puerto Ricans and justified sterilization because they were seen as an inferior race. Many poor, colonized families were viewed as dull-witted and dangerous. These racist views led to the implementation of forced sterilizations. The history of Puerto Rico's reproductive health policies date back to the early 20th century under the disguise of economic and public health reform. With the passing of Law 116 in 1937, the opening of sterilization clinics spread throughout the territory. In 1956, activist Margaret Sanger and biologist researcher Gregory Pincus launched clinical trials for an experimental contraceptive pill in Puerto Rico. Over 200 women in the district of Rio Piedras were enrolled, and a majority of them were poor and lacked access to formal education. The participants received little to no information about the pill, reflecting upon the medical standards of the time that did not prioritize informed consent. Soon they began feeling symptoms of nausea, dizziness, and blood clots, which were all dismissed as unreliable historians. Puerto Rico's history of coerced sterilization and unethical contraceptive pills still affect the reproductive healthcare decisions today. In a recent study, the total fertility rate has dropped to 0.9 births per woman, far below the replacement rate. With the rise of assisted reproductive technology, aka ART, in Puerto Rico, government and medical institutions started to view it as a solution to what some frame as population crisis. While art has a potential to offer reproductive autonomy, its rise risks repeating past injustices if it's used as a demographic tool, rather than a human rights-based intervention. International human rights frameworks, such as the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, offer pathways towards restorative justice that recognize reproductive autonomy as a fundamental right, while also providing a foundation for redressing historical harm. They assist necessitating acknowledging past violations, repairing damaged trust, and ensuring full and informed consent in all aspects of reproductive health care. Unfortunately, systematic failures persist. In September 2017, after Hurricane Maria exposed the fragility of Puerto Rico's healthcare system, disproportionately impacting maternal and reproductive health services. Many clinics and facilities struggle with issues like power outages and supply shortages, leading to life-threatening situations for pregnant individuals. The number of available abortion services dropped and only one clinic remained open immediately after the storm. Future strategies that prevent deepening existing inequalities to this situation could be implementing robust, informed consent procedures, something like collaborating with Puerto Rican healthcare advocates, ethicists, and community members in order to develop consent procedures that acknowledge historical trauma, integrate cultural values, and ensure accessible, community-centered information. Strengthening oversight and accountability mechanisms could also help, like passing legislation establishing a Puerto Rican reproductive ethics board with binding regulatory authority. Finally, centering the voices of Puerto Rican women and establishing intergenerational healing initiatives that address trauma resulting from past reproductive abuses, connecting elders who experience historical violations with younger generations to foster healing and inform ethical approaches to reproductive care.